Fantastic.
So, bro, thanks. Thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for being in my house.
Yeah, exactly. This is so. We found ourselves here again on this couch.
Yeah, there's a lot of special people have spent a lot of important moments in this room right here.
That's right. Yeah. How long have you lived here for?
I've had it since 2011.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like, I was telling Jess when I walked in here the other day, I was like, oh, there's just like this smell when I walk in here. As I say that, I see these pine cones there. And it's like, there's this smell of like welcoming, you know?
That's Jess. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah. So how you been, bro?
I've been amazing. The most tired, the most overworked, and stretched as thin as possible, but the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
To be honest. And it's weird to say that out loud and like to really believe it, but it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like at the absolute maximum for most of my things that I can operate on, the levels I can operate on right now.
Mm-hmm.
But feeling great. How are you? You look amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I feel really good too. I mean, I'm here in LA with you. So
Yeah.
got a nice trip coming up, Hawaii, Aruba, family. So yeah, man, it's been awesome. So, you know, I think most people, you know, when they're fully stretched, they're like, get me out of this. But right now you're just like the happiest you could be.
Mm-hmm.
So one, I would just say that's kind of like a testament to you and like you just being aligned with where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
But so maybe you can just, I mean, tell even me, I'm just curious, like what is like, I mean, you have 3 businesses under your belt. You have an awesome family and a young child who also deserves and demands attention.
Yeah.
So what is taking up your time and what does it even look like right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the time is spent between being a husband, being a father, being a friend, being a business owner and a team leader. So from a business aspect, you know, I've got Cinco and The Manchester, and those are places where I really like to be hands-on with employees and try to lead by example. At The Manchester, which is new, only 3 weeks, I'm bartending 2 nights a week and running the floor, checking on every table, doing the maitre d' service of, you know, a nicer establishment, which is it's just being of service, right? And then I've started to realize that is something that I enjoy. It's why I got into this business in the first place. And it's not all that different from what it is to be a parent. You're especially to a toddler, because they have so many emotions that are whipping through their little bodies and demands and desires and curiosities. And a lot of it is being of service to help guide them through these experiences. And there's times where you have to put your foot down and like, hey, like this is, you know, for your safety. And that's when you're really, you know, disciplining, I guess. I don't know what other word to use for that, but most of the time it's really, you're just guiding. Yeah. And then, you know, finding those little moments to still be like, oh, hey, Jess, I love you. You know, we started this all for a reason. And, so it's just interesting. But I think being this busy, that also makes you trim the fat. And you're like, oh, that's not in alignment. Like that's an old pattern. I don't need that. I don't have to even think about that. Right. Which is cool. Yeah. And, I don't know if it's the amount of stuff that we have going on or age, because I'll be 38 in April. But definitely feel this new version of myself. And I had, a clairvoyant that I work with, tell me that a while ago, probably almost a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, that's like, oh, there's this whole new version of you coming. And so I wasn't resisting that, but it didn't happen like that. So I was kind of like, we'll see. And then all of a sudden now it's here and I just feel it. It's more relaxed into a lot of things. Right. Yeah. So just like really accepting that life constantly has these phases and these chapters, and knowing that this chapter won't last forever. I wouldn't be able to sustain working till 3 a.m., going to sleep at 3:30, waking up at 7 and hanging out with Phoenix and going back to work at 3 p.m. forever. But I knew it was coming, and it's fun right now. Right. To be putting in the work and putting in the time.
Right.
And I am someone who does like to burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while I have a full crash and I just need to recharge. But I think I get something out of that. I don't know. It feels like I'm cheating life when I can be doing that much at the same time.
Right. So also just for context, so Cinco is your first restaurant that opened up 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then you just opened up the Manchester.
Yeah.
And they're like pretty close to each other in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically like super hands-on there right now.
Yeah. When we opened Cinco, we were the only the only bartenders there. We had almost run out of money. We basically did run out of money opening it. There was 5 of us. That's why we called it Cinco. For background context, one of our partners is from Oaxaca. I met him 13 years ago. He was my bar back at a spot here in Santa Monica. And, long story short, he taught me Spanish. I taught him English. And in the process of that, he had shared his story of crossing the border illegally to provide for his brothers and sisters. And I was really moved by that.
So let's actually make that long story long.
It's
like
get into
a
that?
great
Okay.
story.
All right.
That I think,
Cool.
So you and Hernan, who is your Oaxacan business partner at Cinco.
And brother. Yeah.
And brother.
Basically got this job off of Craigslist. And it was a new bar opening up here in Santa Monica. And I meet this kid, and he was the only other guy that was working full time like me. They had hired a lot of bartenders. They were doing like 2 or 3 days a week. So first thing I said to him, I remember, was like, "Hey, yo puedo hablar un poquito español." And he was like, "Oh, all right, cool." And he had this little...
Which means what?
Oh, yeah. I can speak a little Spanish,
Nice.
which was like about as good as it was at the time. Like it was pretty rough. But I had a little bit of a basis and a desire to learn. And so, he had this little Franklin electronic translator, and we're working 6 days a week together. And I basically said, "Hey, man, like, why are you here?" That was one of my first questions. And one sentence at a time, he starts telling me how his family fell on really hard times in Oaxaca, and he came from really humble beginnings. And since then, I've seen where he came from, and it was a room smaller than this with no running water or electricity. And that's where he lived with his grandparents and his brothers and sisters and his mom. And eventually he had worked his way up to getting to school, and he was in school in Mexico City, and he found out that his father had lost his job, and they were struggling, and he dropped everything he was doing and sold everything he owned and paid a coyote to come across the border. And then he, to catch him up to where we were meeting, he had been working 2 jobs, 7 days a week, and sending all his money home. He was washing dishes, bussing tables, doing anything he could. And I had never firsthand witnessed that kind of selflessness, and it was a really moving moment. I remember him like finishing that story and being like, now I'm here. And I honestly think it was the very next question. I said, "How do you say we're going to own a bar together someday?" And I still have this little sheet of paper. We would print out credit card receipt paper and write little phrases down, because it's like really easy to learn a language that way, one little catchphrase at a time. Mm-hmm. And he wrote, "Algún día no muy lejano." One day soon, basically. And it's still in my journal. I have it. I can show it to you. And that was it. We just started saving up money. We met a couple other bartenders working in the area. I had been thinking about going back to school. There was some pressure from my family to go back to graduate school. And I was thinking I was actually studying to take the LSAT, the bar. Never ended up doing anything other than the prep course. I decided to not even apply, and we just saved up money. And 5 years later, we opened Cinco.
Nice. Wow.
And so that led to Cinco, and which led to the tequila. Because once we opened Cinco, we found out that commercial tequila brands use additives and artificial flavors to manipulate the final batch, and they don't have to disclose it. And we just felt like we had worked so hard to get to where we were, and why were we supporting these brands that are essentially fooling people,
right?
Us included as bartenders. We've been working, supporting their brands for 10 years, championing their brands, saying how great it was. So that led us to the tequila, and then
how did you find out about that?
One of the brands that we look up to came in and we were just doing a ton of agave research when we opened Cinco, because we wanted to know what we were serving and be knowledgeable. And I just think it's cool to go to a place and you're learning something while having an experience, whether it's learning about food or wine or whatever. And so we wanted to be able to provide that service for people. And Tequila Ocho came in, and they just flat out asked us, "Have you ever heard of the 1% rule?" Oh no. And you can Google it. It's an official regulation in the CRT, the regulatory body that governs tequila in Mexico. And so we realized that a lot of these tequilas that we liked had things like salted caramel extract, added glycerol, vanilla extract, anything you can imagine, really.
So you could put 1% of anything and not declare it?
Yeah. Yeah, which is crazy, because you imagine having a 100 ml bottle of water and you take out 1 ml and you put in, highly concentrated lemon extract. It's a pretty big difference, right? And so we realized that we didn't really know what premium tequila was. So we kind of set out to find out, well, if what we thought was premium tequila is really just decent tequila with a bunch of flavor additives in it. What really is premium tequila? What are they drinking where they make tequila? Which is always a good way to find out what the best thing is. Go to the source and ask the people that are making it, the guys that are harvesting the agave in the fields, what do you drink? And that's what we did.
So you went to the Highlands?
We went to the Highlands of Jalisco. We first of all, we set out trying to contact families and to see if we could find somebody to work with, and nobody was responding. We were coming up into an agave shortage. Agave goes through these cycles of high demand and low volume because they take 8 years to mature. And so it's a pattern that you can look all the way back into the 70s, and it's just like a nice flowing pattern. So it wasn't really an opportune time, for most to be looking to start something new. Whereas we saw it as, well, if we can weather this storm, but then by the time we come out of that, which is where we are now, we'll be in a better place. But nobody would get back to us. And then actually the founder of Tequila Ocho, one of our favorite tequilas, Tomas Estes, came into Cinco, and he wrote a couple of last names on a napkin. And that ended up leading us to the Aceves family.
Oh, nice.
So then, contacted them, wrote them an email, ended up getting a response from Jose, who's now somebody that I consider family. He's like an older brother to me. Went down after that and hung out for 3 days, and that was it. From there, it was like, okay, we'd made this amazing connection with his family.
Right.
We loved the Highlands. We learned so much about tequila. We did all these blind tastings. We kind of figured the profile that we wanted to aim for. And then over the next 5 to 6 months, we convinced the Aceves brothers to work with us.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we turn this?
Can we tell
Google to turn this off?
I forgot about that. Hey, Google. Stop. Thank you.
Nice. So okay. I didn't even think of that too. It's so nice, the ambient music. Anyway, so you convinced the Aceves brothers to do this with you, but I remember you telling me this was a difficult task.
Initially, so they're 5th generation growers, and this is the 1st generation where they're distilling. So initially, his thought was to broker a deal between us and this really amazing brand of tequila called Galindo, which isn't imported into the U.S. So it's like what Patron did back in the day. They white labeled a tequila that was amazing and is still amazing in Mexico, but wasn't imported into the U.S. They put their own label on it, and that was it. And they had a 10-year contract to do so. And then now they have their own facility, but that was Siete Leguas at the time. Oh, wow. And so his idea was to do the same for us with this brand Galindo. Really amazing tequila. But when we went out there, the facility was incredible, picturesque. They were a part of the original Jose Cuervo growers, and when Cuervo bought them out, they were able to harvest some of their agave and put a distillery and start their own brand rather than just growing for Jose Cuervo. This is actually the Galindo. This is this other, right. And it was really cool. It was an amazing story, but the connection wasn't with them. The connection was with Jose and with the Aceves brothers, and this is the 5th generation, and there are 5 siblings in this generation, and it's just like the 5s. I look for the signs, and Cinco and 5's always been an important number to me, and so I just kept saying like, no man, like we're supposed to work with you,
right?
And after a while, he realized it, and ever since then, it's been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, so we did our first run. We got our first run of tequila in here February 3rd of 2016. It landed in the United States.
So that's when Angelisco was born.
Yeah, that was like the launch date. Mm-hmm.
And that name obviously comes from Jalisco, but there's like where is that?
Yeah, so Los Angeles or Los Angeles,
right,
where
right.
where we all came together, where our Cinco family came together. We met Hernan, and where we created this family and this lifestyle together, and then Jalisco, where we partnered with the Aceves family. So, and Jalisco, it's a made up word. Yeah.
Right. Nice. So then that was your second venture you launched. And so what's the journey like with, I guess just like these five guys and like maybe even just Hernan in general, because like there's like this deep connection with like you and him. Like he obviously is your brother, and this kind of goes back to what you were just saying earlier of like you just being of service, and like whether that's like serving someone a drink at a bar and like talking to them, having a conversation that they just like are not expecting to have with a bartender, or to like, be of service to this guy who's like grinding his ass off to get to, send money to his family back in Mexico, and like just be like, man, like you're an amazing dude. I want to like start a business with you.
Yeah. With Hernan, I just saw how hard he worked, and the one thing that I noticed was that he never complained ever. He would sleep on cardboard in the alleyway in between jobs because he was so tired, but he'd be like, I'm fine, I'm good. And that made me realize I had nothing to ever feel sorry for myself about. And then there was this other aspect of just kind of witnessing like the praise that our current company would give him. Like, he's amazing. He's one of our best employees. But there was never a talk of like, hey, we want to train him to be a bartender. It was like, there was this glass ceiling that I could see. And maybe it wasn't, maybe they would have moved him up. I'm not sure. But I just realized like, I want more for him, and I want to be a part of this. And he's somebody that I could work with. And that's the kind of work ethic and drive that can get you anywhere. And so that was the kind of the start of that. And then, once we opened Cinco, I kind of did this really deep dive into myself and consciousness and the human existence and the human experience. And so that my whole perception of what we're doing as bartenders and the service we're providing has become a little bit more, I guess, conscious. Whereas before, maybe I realized that, we're like providing people a good time. People like to come in and see us. But now I can see on a deeper level, like some of the conversations that we have really can change people's lives, even as silly as it may seem. Somebody coming in and being heard at the bar. I had a crazy deep conversation with somebody last night who told me that they have cancer and they were having surgery in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And we had a big hug before they left, and a big talk. And I was telling them about different books that I've read because someone very close to me has cancer. I won't say who because she has a privacy issue.
Right.
She doesn't want people to know, but
right.
I don't say it's an issue, but it is for me.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No,
but,
no, you are. And like, this is the thing, like and when we talked about this last time I was here, was like, yeah, you're going into these places that are, I would say, where people bring in their like deepest, darkest demons, and like really to get away from them through alcohol, through like being at a bar, and so like from the outside, if someone were to just look at, oh, this guy has a Mexican restaurant and he has a tequila company and he just opened up another restaurant that's kind of like restaurant bar. It's like, it just kind of falls into this like category of like, oh, it's just like, restaurant and alcohol, but it's so much more than that, obviously. And as you're discovering, it's like this just deeper meaning for you,
Yeah. There was a moment when I started diving into all these Eastern ideologies and, deeper thoughts that I started questioning, what I'm doing. I'm selling alcohol and, and tacos to people. Should I be doing more? And then Finally, after, a few months of sitting with that, I realized, wait, there's people that have met at Cinco on the first date, or just met at the bar by chance, and that are now married and have kids. People have one couple actually got married inside Cinco. People have had their receptions there. This is a space that has brought people together. It's people have had a lot of life experience there in the last 7 years. I met Jessica there at the front door. And so it is far more than that. And there are a lot of, I think, demons attached with, drinking and alcohol. It's one of our oldest vices as a, human race. And I've realized that those are the areas that need the help the most, where you can dive into and be present and, hold space for people. Because it's really easy to recognize after all this time who's having a drink to connect or bond with somebody or celebrate something, and who's having a drink to escape or to try to hide something from themselves or from somebody else. There's always something to be done.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, when I started discovering tequila, or like at least how it's different than other alcohols, was actually through you at Burning Man when we first met. You had this like that cooler of like a spicy marg. Yeah. It was like the greatest tasting drink I've ever had in my life. Yeah. And it was just something different about it. And the more I learned about what you do, and the more I learned about tequila and how you spoke about it, and the agave plant and how it's processed, and the way you go right to the source, and like you really see the spirit of agave like literally being kind of implanted into this drink. I mean, it changed my whole life and perception of alcohol in general. And like, really, I only drink tequila and mezcal now. Like, don't really drink many other alcohols, like maybe some wine, some here and there, but like I prefer, obviously, as you know, mezcal. But what have you discovered about that, or like what is it about that kind of agave spirit that you're noticing that's maybe different in tequila than other alcohols?
Well, I mean, obviously the 1% rule is not just in tequila. There's, additives put in wine, in whiskeys, in pretty much every spirit and alcohol that you can imagine. The first moment that I had that really shifted my perception, because I was always a whiskey and beer drinker. I liked tequila, and I remember the very first time I had mezcal. I was bartending in San Francisco. I was 22 years old, and my bar manager was from Matatlan, Oaxaca. And for his birthday, his mom sent him a Crystal Geyser water bottle full of mezcal in the mail. And he opened it up, and I had absolutely no clue what he was handing me. And he gave it to me behind the bar, and I took a swig and was just like blown away. I never had anything so smoky. I thought it tasted like just bizarre, and it was overwhelming. But now I understand like where all those flavors come from, and then that's really as real as it gets. But the moment that I had where I kind of shifted away from whiskeys to agave spirits, I was in Joshua Tree with Jess, and I had brought a bottle of rye whiskey and a bottle of tequila and a bottle of mezcal. And we'd gone out into the park, and we'd done a little psilocybin journey, and on the way back down, I kind of like a little alcohol to ground, and I was looking at the bottles, and I started realizing that whiskeys are, a rye whiskey, at least 51% rye, and then it's corn, and then it's wheat, and it's all these different grains. And I started imagining all these different fields from all spread out all over the U.S. and like what pesticides are they putting on it, and what kind of process are they having to go through, and imagining it all coming together. And then I looked at the mezcal and the tequila, and I was thinking of just this, desert succulent that's growing for 8 years and soaking up all, the nutrients of the earth and the minerals and the water and the stars and the sun. And it stores all that energy in its heart. And then you pull it out, and, it gives itself to you, and you cook it and you ferment it and then distill it. And that's all it is. It's agave and water. It's two things. And being there in the desert, there was something about it. And we didn't even crack the whiskey at all. And that was a big shift for me. And that was right before, was when we were in the beginning stages of, starting the tequila.
Damn. That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's where I learned about it too, basically. Because that was like implanted into you, which was implanted into me. And like, I feel like that's what I took in from you when you were like showing me about tequila and all that stuff, it's like, it's just this different experience with it,
And like, no, there's nothing wrong with whiskey for all the whiskey drinkers. There's a lot of passion and love that goes into that too. That's just my, journey and the turn that I took at the, at the fork in the road. And yeah, that's why it's so powerful to me. And you see these plants out there, and just the way they're little warriors with the, the little spikes on the end of the leaves, the hojas, and they're used for everything in antiquity. They're very fibrous. If you take the leaves off and let them dry out and you peel the top layer off, you can see all of the fibers, and they would use those for clothes and ropes, and they would use the needles for sewing, and they would use them for weapons. And you can cut a hole in it, and the agua miel, the agave nectar, will just kind of pour out into the hole, and they would scoop that out and use it for food. They would let it ferment in there and make pulque. And they believed that they were so powerful, and that Mayahuel, one of the gods, initially struck the agave plant with a lightning bolt, and she's the one that created alcohol. Wow. It's just really cool. There's so much ancient history around this plant and this, what it can do.
Yeah, I love these, like, whether they're like apocryphal tales or like it's just what these like indigenous people have started to learn about the earth and the land. And I love to learn about these things because there's such deeper meaning to it all. Again, like whether they're myths or not, and it's like there is some wisdom to it all, like, and a lot of these different plants like have these different wisdoms, but you have to go to the source in order to actually like learn about these things. It's the same thing as like me with a broth business. Like I love going to the farm to like talk to the farmer and like learn about how he treats his animals and how he farms, and what happens when this happens on the land or whatever, like there's so many variables, and it just for me gets us closer and closer to the things that we consume, and alcohol is interesting because it's like it elicits a non-ordinary state of consciousness. So I mean everything we consume does, but obviously alcohol on a more visceral level maybe. But that's what I'm interested in, is that kind of deep connection with everything we consume and everything we come into contact with. So I love hearing these things about like agave. That's why obviously I want to go with you to Oaxaca someday, so we can look at these fields. And you're growing a field for mezcal product, right?
Yeah, we are. We have about 60,000 agave growing, Espadín agave growing in Oaxaca. Right. To create a mezcal, and all agave spirits in Mexico were called mezcal at one point.
Keep going. I'm just gonna restart.
Okay. Jose Aceves Sr. is Jose's, our master distiller's father, and he is a farmer. And when we go out to their prized field, Providencia.
So this is another Aceves field.
This is a Aceves field. Yeah, I'm jumping a little bit. Yeah. But he still refers to his agave as mezcal.
Right.
He says, mis mezcales están felices viviendo aquí. My mezcal, or the agave, are happy living here. And he talks to them. I saw him see a weed and say, I'm coming back for you later. Like, kind of quietly. And I was like, what did you just say? Wow. But that's how he's so connected to the land and to the plants, which is so cool. And that feeling is really prevalent in Oaxaca, because mezcal became tequila because in town of Tequila there was really good businessmen. There was a lot of trade coming through there, and they started calling their mezcal de tequila. So Jose Cuervo, the Salza family, and the Camarena family were like three of the first big founding families to create.
They were in Oaxaca?
They're in Tequila, Jalisco. So they're the one that changed their mezcal into tequila.
Right.
And then modernization brought in steam cooking ovens, and then they didn't have to use open flame to cook the agave, because you have to cook the agave to convert the starch to sugar so that the yeast can ferment the sugar and create alcohol. Right. But the ancient way is to use open flame. And so in Oaxaca, where they weren't trying to do mass business and turn this into something super profitable. They were just still making their mezcal for the town or for their family. It stayed the same for centuries and or decades. And, you know, all of a sudden the world has woken up to how amazing this stuff is, and you go out and, you know, you see this fancy bottle on the shelf with a beautiful label and this nice cork, but you go out and you realize it's being made in basically a shade structure with like two walls and a bamboo roof, and it's a donkey pulling a stone wheel that they've created. And you're like, well, why do you use the stone wheel? And they're like, well, because the stones are right there in the river. And you're like, oh, why do you use the mesquite to, you know, to cook the agave? And it's like, because there's mesquite trees that grow on this hill right here. It's all, you know, for its function, you know, function over form, but it's so beautiful. And so we wanted, obviously, Hernan's from Oaxaca. He grew up having to go tend to agave fields before elementary school. Like, that's something I personally cannot relate to, being woken up at 3 a.m. and having to go work in fields as a, you know, from the age of 6. And so we realized, like, how amazing would it be to take this family to go from having to work in the fields before school to be able to help put food on the table to owning a mezcal brand, and to give his family down in Oaxaca a business. Wow. But we've recently hit some bumps in the road with that. Marco, his brother, who's down there, who's been tending to the fields, was held up at gunpoint, and they demanded money from him. Wow. Because they just assume he must have tons of money since he's tending to all these agave fields. Damn. Which is frustrating, because it really was, you know, we bought the plants as babies, you know, 5 years ago, and it wasn't a big investment at all. And we were just bartenders putting little bits of money in at a time. But that's one of the sad things about the reality of the world, and, you know, why we're lucky to be in places like Canada and the United States, where there's a system to protect you from stuff like that. But we're in the process of figuring it out. You know, we told him, hey, if you want to walk from this, and we're fine. Like, well, we don't need to do this. And he said, no, I mean, I'm building something for my family and for, you know, for my kids' children. And if we give up now, then we're letting them win. So we're going to figure out a solution. There's always a solution to everything, even something like this. Damn,
that's wild.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard it. You know, just thinking positively and knowing that there's a solution out there, and it'll make the ending product that much, you know, more meaningful. When you have gotten over something like this to get there. So what is the difference, though? You were saying that with the mezcal, they use that open flame, and then they started to like commercialize it and use like the bigger ovens or something. Yeah. So I mean, you go down from village to village, and they'll have their different method of cooking, but they'll have a stone pit, or they'll dig a hole, or they'll leave, and they'll bury the stone pit, or they'll let they'll start a huge mesquite fire and let it burn down to coal, and then they throw the agave on that and they bury it, and it's all very similar. And they'll put palm fronds on top of that, or they'll add, you know, other things into the fire that can possibly be giving it flavor too. Oh,
because like, so this is the main difference, obviously, between
mezcal and tequila. Yeah, but then
the agave.
Yeah, the agave gets charred. I can show you some photos afterwards. Cool. And it's much smaller production. Right. And then it's fermented in wooden vats or whatever they have on the property, and distilled twice, and it's distilled to proof, like mezcal, artisanal, and tradicional. They have 3 categories, because they're starting to try and protect it from becoming, basically tequila became over commercialized, and it got really stretched far from what it was in the beginning. Now it's like on this return, while mezcal is on this blast off, and people are immediately trying to protect it from going to where tequila did, if that makes sense. So traditional mezcal, you know, open flame fire pits, it's hand crushed agave, and then that agave is just taken and put in these wooden vats, and or clay, or some have stainless steel if they can afford it, and then they add water from a deep well or from a river or from whatever their water source is near them, and then it just naturally ferments. Something, again, that's different. It varies with temperature. Some people it's a week, some people it's 14 days.
And that's after they burn.
And that's after it's cooked. So it's cooked to convert the starch to sugar,
Right.
and then you take that and you add water, and then the master distiller is the one who's looking to see how much water should be added to these vats.
Wow.
And I can like send you the photos too. I don't know if you ever like upload photos for people to look at, but it's pretty cool to see the difference. So then the difference of, in the town of Tequila, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we can use a steam cooking oven and use steam to cook these agave, and then they won't char, and then it'll be a more approachable flavor. And it's something that's, more appealing to the masses. It's softer, it's easier. And that was like, as they started to shift away from mezcal and become tequila. So
everything was mezcal before.
Everything was mezcal.
And then wow, that I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that originally either. It's all, and still I feel like it's just like any other situation. The more you learn, you feel like the less you know, and you're still a novice.
So it's the traditional, like tequila, or mezcal is the traditional tequila, really. It's like the original.
All tequilas are mezcal, but not all mezcals are tequila.
Yeah. Right.
If that makes sense. So you can't make you couldn't make a mezcal in the state of Jalisco because the mezcal made in Jalisco is tequila.
Oh, so you can't. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you'd have to call it. And we actually have one at the Manchester. We have, and there's several. There's agave spirits from Jalisco that aren't tequila.
Right. Right. And so nowadays, every mezcal comes out in Oaxaca, no matter what, right?
No, Durango, and I think there's a few other states as well, but Durango for sure. Duranguese mezcal, yeah.
And they're trying to really protect that process, basically.
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of people that are doing the right thing and then there's big brands that are mass producing mezcal, and they're using the name of this piece of equipment will pop into my head in a second. Diffusers. A diffuser is this piece of equipment that would take up, half of a warehouse silo, and it's cooking, macerating, and adding water all at the same time, and it's extracting every last bit of fermentable nutrients from the agave so that you're getting the most bang for your buck. Essentially, you're making the most money out of every agave. But in that process, it's actually changing the molecular structure of the plant, and it's changing the quality, obviously. And then I'm sure they're adding additives in at the end.
So like probably Casamigos is doing something like that.
Casamigos, I don't think they have a diffuser. But if you Google Casamigos and flavor extracts, there's a lot of stuff that'll probably pop up.
Right.
I don't like to trash any one brand, but that was one that got brought up a lot during this process of kind of becoming aware. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like something like a salted caramel extract or a vanilla extract is, essentially bad for you. To me, it was just, just the ethics of like, like this taste, what we think is super premium is this secret ingredient to grandma's cookies,
Yeah. Well, it also just sounds like, as you grow massively, like you almost, because from what I understand, if you're doing it the traditional way, you can't get the same flavor with every batch, right?
It's like wine. Yeah. It's totally impossible. And what that should be celebrated for us.
Right. Yeah.
And for some brands, they celebrate that.
Yeah. But a lot of retailers or something like in here, it's like
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Like coffee. Yeah. It's like, if you standardize, you have to get this a standardized product, or otherwise, like some customer, whatever, it's like, that's kind of the downfalls, I guess, of just like capitalism and
growing to a certain point. But I do think that there's a way to rewrite the story and to have everybody, like wine, and although I'm finding out that a lot of wine has additives in it as well. But there are brands out there that are big, that are worldwide. Tequila Ocho, Siete Leguas, we've always looked Tapatio. We look up to them. They don't use additives. And the batches are slightly different every time, but that's cool.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Really
cool. You can save the ones that that are really special, and they change over time too, because they oxidize. So they're going to naturally get softer and open up over time anyway. But yeah, you're right. Anytime a multinational corporation becomes involved, nobody's worrying about the quality anymore. They are to an extent, but they're mostly worried. The bottom line comes first, right? How do we maximize profit rather than how are we maximizing quality?
Yeah.
So it's cool to be a part of, a brand that is focused on, providing people with the highest quality we can for the best price possible. That was really like one of our first, driving factors.
Yeah. Nice, man. So I want to talk to you about a few more things that come to my head right now. Okay. Like one of them is, I want to pick your brain a little bit on surfing, but I also want to talk to you a little bit about like just being a dad.
Okay.
Let's start there. Cause like
being a dad.
Yeah. Because to me, I talk about this with a lot of people who know you as like Mike and Justin, for example. It's like Chrissy, like we look at you and we're just like, how does this guy do this shit? Like he's crazy, You have 3 businesses, you have a wife and a kid who's like, again, like just takes up everything, right? It's like, and you kind of like, that's just the age he's at, right? But you're so you're so on, like you're so attentive with him. And obviously like you have like the deepest love for him, but like what is that like to be a dad?
I mean, I spent a lot of time by myself growing up as a kid. I had a lot of like alone times, I have like a lone wolf that, exists inside my heart. And so I had a lot of years where when I wasn't working, I was just like really able to completely focus on myself. And I think that was one of the biggest shifts, was all of a sudden you're of service all the time, except for these little moments where he's taking a nap, literally, or like at school or, class or something. And I wasn't sure, actually thought that I didn't want to be a dad for years. And I think maybe a lot of guys go through that. And so maybe I'm just cliche, but, and speaking of cliches, all the cliches come true. I think as you get older, you start to realize that, and, they exist for a reason. Like you'll never love something so much. Your heart's going to swell beyond, it's like these, like they could be on a Hallmark card, right? But but it's all true. Like you can't imagine it'll make you choke up. Yeah. But like, that's what rewrites the story, right? Loving something so much.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you realize, I want to put this guy first. And what it really does, honestly, for me, at least from my experience, is it made me like have these kind of time travel moments where, and also really this crazy deep empathic connection where you're seeing the experience from his side, right? And you're seeing that everything you're doing, you're starting to see the mirror image of how you're affecting him and how he's receiving that. And it brings up moments that you had, like having a session with an IFS session, where you start to remember something. You're like, am I really remembering that, or am I creating a memory because of this moment that's happening right now? So there was a lot of kind of trippy stuff like that, especially the first year. But their energy is so big, and especially his. He's the only one I know, so it's we're kind of like biased to think that every kid's like that. But then sometimes we hang out with other toddlers and they're quiet and introverted, and we're like, oh wow, they sit there and read books too, like not ours. And so I know I'm kind of just rambling, but it's been the best process of my life. It's the thing I'm most proud of for sure is Phoenix. And in the first year and a half of his life, I had more people than I could count on my hand that in public come up to me and say, your son just made my day. Yeah. And like a woman just burst into tears. I don't even know what he did. He smiled at her or something. He couldn't talk yet in the grocery store. And so I know that he's a special little being, and that all kids are really, because of the innocence and the love that they are carrying, And so it definitely makes you really present. And I know every once in a while I'll be distracted. I'm with him, but I have to get some stuff done for work, and I'm a bit distracted. But we always try our best to just, like we did yesterday, go down to the beach and have these moments where we're out in nature and he's laughing, and try to get him laughing uncontrollably, several times a day.
Yeah. So like, what are the things that kind of came up for you? And like, you were saying something in like the first year of his life, there were some like moments that were coming up for you, like some flashbacks.
Yeah, just realizing, it just makes you very hyper aware, at least me, of my relationship with my dad, and areas where, oh wow, like I didn't feel that close to him ever, and it was kind of like, dad's home, kind of scared, and I was like, oh, I don't want him to ever feel like that.
Right.
I want us to be like buddies and do everything together and to learn things together and start to realize the role that you play, in, guiding something back into this life experience. Cause I believe in reincarnation. We've talked about this many times, but just so anybody listening. So I did a pretty deep meditation when Jess was still pregnant with Phoenix, and something that came up to me like really clear was, you're going to remind me what it is to be human, and I'm going to help you remember what it is to be infinite.
Nice.
It was like, that's pretty spot on to how it's been.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. He is an infinite being of light, and just like Phoenix is such a good name for him. It's like literally like he is like the charge of the Phoenix, that's just like, it's explosive.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, it's wild.
Yeah. And he wouldn't, labor started, and then 2 days later he finally comes out, and he waited to come out on summer solstice.
Right.
He's the little sun god, and it just fits him perfectly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, came out on the longest and brightest day of the year, right? That's such an amazing story for this kid.
I know.
He's just going to be like, yeah.
Came out in the morning on the longest day of the year, and he's the little hijo de la luz. That's what he reminds me of.
What was that?
That's like child of the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Nice. Man. Yeah. Well, what are like some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from him, or like continue to, like, what's, yeah.
Presence for sure. Definitely there's a lot of patience and zen and lessons, and they're really good at breaking you, and you get frustrated back, but if you don't give in to that frustration, there's always a way out. There's always like a side door or side hatch, and it's not like, you're arguing over something directly. You've got to put your socks on, we're leaving, and it's like, oh, there's a misdirection. There's a, hey, we can start laughing about something else, and we can put the socks on in the car, once we get to where we're going, or, fine, you want to be in just your diaper for the car ride, no problem. It's like, and there's these little, and life is like that too. When you're having like this head-on confrontation or problem, there's these little side routes that you can take and sidestep, or maybe you can just jump over the gate and you don't have to use the key to go through it, know? And there's been a lot of that. Also, something just totally random is he cheerses with anything. He'll walk up to you with a pickle and be like, cheers, daddy. And I love that, because I think that was like a big lesson, is like, it's kind of this message to just constantly be celebrating.
Right. Yeah. He's certainly a good reminder of that. Even when we went down to the beach the other day, I went to my Airbnb and I was smoked, man.
Yeah.
And I come back to pick up my stuff here, and he was like, he's just still like so charged.
Oh yeah.
And I was just telling Jess, I'm like, I am exhausted. She's like, it's Phoenix. And I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Like,
yeah.
He's just a zap of a charge. And, if you're not used to like operating like that, he could like just like smoke you too, but like what I noticed was also when I came here and he was still like that, I was just so excited to see him again,
Yeah.
and just to see how he was still going. He's like opening the fridge and like, it's like, I'm still hungry, like,
he's just so curious. Anything that you're doing that has intention, I just realized this like 5 days ago. Anything you're doing anywhere in the house or wherever with intention, he wants to be a part of it, because he can see that you're doing something with intention. He wants to learn it. If you pick up a tool, if you're open the fridge and you're looking for something, you're making coffee, he wants to help. He wants to push the button on the grinder. He wants to, anything that he can learn. He's just their constant desire. which is cool because also it's making me want to learn things with him so that, or learn things that I can teach him. It's like making me brush up on stuff and reading and things. And so I have a journal going of all these things that he's taught me and lessons that I've learned over the last, almost 2.5 years now. Well, actually I started when Jess was still pregnant. So more than 2.5 years, that I'll eventually give to him.
Nice.
Cause that's what this whole process is. He's teaching me far more than I'm teaching him at this point.
Yeah. That's a great gift to give to him eventually. And just on the topic of gifts, you're like probably the greatest gift giver ever. It's like,
thank you.
You just have this like awareness of an intention that I think is so like out of the box, so like creative, and it's not even like, it's always the simplest things, but it just like, they just land the best way,
Thank you. It was a very nice compliment.
What is like a gift that you've given, let's say in the last like few months that,
let's see,
just curious, or like in the last year, like I'm just curious.
A lot of the things that I've gifted in the last year were Angelisco things. I made some like nice bomber jackets for us, for the managing partners, and we were in Chicago and this bartender was like, man, that jacket's awesome. I just took it off and gave it to him. I like those kind of moments because people are like, no. And you're like, no, yeah, absolutely. Like this is exactly why it's yes. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to part with those things. And even right now I'm like, oh yeah, that bomber was cool. But, But those are the things that give me the most joy, when you know that somebody's really appreciating it and loving it, to like let go of it and pass it on is really cool. I did the same thing with a necklace a couple months ago that I really liked. Actually I had made it with this stamp. It was a little stamped piece of silver. It was a little Angelisco necklace. Wow. What else have I gifted?
Well, just like as you're saying that, it just reminds me of, or like it makes me think, like a lot of the best gifts are basically the ones that are actually toughest to part ways with, Mm-hmm. Because you just know that like this is going to mean so much to this person. And then it's like this surrender of like, I don't really need this. I don't really know if I need anything physical that's,
just passing it along. Yeah. I gave Lucas one of my favorite jean jackets the other day, and he's been wearing it. He looks great in it.
Nice.
Yeah. Little things like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. On being a parent though is definitely something that people shouldn't be afraid of, because it'll respect it, but don't fear it,
Yeah. Well, I think we're just in an age of having a lot of fear around that, around having kids. Mm-hmm. It's like not a lot of, from what I know, is like fertility rates are just dropping pretty hard. And like, I think a lot of people are shying away from having children. Mm-hmm. I mean, even just like looking at my friends, like I'm 31 and like most of my friends are around that age. There aren't a lot that have kids, it's like, which is cool too. It's like, I think it's just like going into it with that clear, like, what do you want? Like there's a couple of friends of mine that just are very clear. They don't want kids, and that's super cool. Like whatever, good. Like they have something else that they love so much that they just want to, commit to, but I think, I don't know what it's like to have a kid, but I do want kids. And I imagine that is like, I mean, like, look, there's nothing really greater you can create than life, right? Like what is there? Like, I don't know, maybe not. I don't think there is. So to me, it's like more of, it's that kind of, how can we come into deeper connection with this life that we have only so many years to experience. I think one of the greatest ways is to create a life and put your heart and energy and soul, everything into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know several people that say they aren't going to have kids and probably won't. And they're giving back to, humanity in different ways, and on like a broader scale, which was actually something that the part of me that didn't want to have kids was that like, oh, like, well, I want to give back and donate and, donate my time. And like, in that way, like everybody's your kid and, that kind of, thought process. And then when you're actually do have, a kid and you're really hyper focused just on your own unit, there was a part of me that felt like that was selfish. But now that Phoenix is, been around for 2.5 years, and I see how many people's lives he positively affects, and how many people, watch Jessica's Instagram stories or mine, and will tell me when they meet me, like, oh my, like I can't get enough of your kid and like your family, like we look up to you, and it's really humbling, because in the moment I'm just doing it it's just for like I'm thinking about my immediate friends that want to stay involved with what we're doing in the process, and it's like an easy way for family to check in on us. But to realize that we're positively affecting people's perception of what it is to be married and to have kids and to be parents is really pretty cool. And I have realized that he has a really powerful impact on a lot of people around him, and so it is a way to affect far more than just our little family unit.
Yeah, man. So, and also you just have another one on the way, which is like, how are you? I love how it's like, you're the busiest you've ever been. And it's like, now you're bringing in something that's like going to be even more.
Yeah. I mean, now knowing how it is the first time around is, I'm not scared of it at all. It's so funny. People are like, what, are you crazy? Or, are you freaking out? I'm like, no, in the first 6 months, you're up a lot. But it's like change diaper, feeding, back to sleep. There's a lot of sleeping, a lot of naps involved. And Phoenix is starting school in January, which is super exciting, crazy. Yeah. But yeah, I've started to look at life as you're juggling, right? And you learn how to toss the ball in the air, and then you add 2, and you're like, all right, then I'm kind of bored. And then you got 3, and you get that down, and then you're like, well, let's go for it. Let's learn 4. And then once you've got 4, you're like, I mean, how hard could the 5th one be? Like, I'm going to figure it out. Like, I didn't, you may drop things here and there, but you get through it, you get past it. And, there's something about this next phase of, this chapter of my life that I'm in, where both Jess and I are realizing like, yeah, we could have more than 2 before the second one even here.
Wow.
Because it's just really cool to be a part of this, family unit. And then in addition to that, we're just so lucky to have people in our lives like you that are such amazing friends, and you're such an amazing brother to me and to Jess, but then to see your Uncle Timmy, and Phoenix talks about you all the time. Do you know what I mean? And he little things, little games that you played when you were here, he still talks about playing with you. And that's really cool. I think we're really lucky in that. I don't know very many other little kids that have that many adult friends. You're his friend.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You're not like my friend, and he's like, oh, Timmy's here. Like, get away, Dad.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Which is so cool. And I think that's something important for people to know that are thinking about having kids, is like, don't just close the doors and stay inside. It's sometimes easier because the kids are insane at times, and you don't want them running all over a restaurant or whatever, but like, keep bringing everybody in. People want to be a part of everything.
Yeah.
And that way we're kind of changing what it is to raise a kid, all of us collectively.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Because you've got Lucas, who's here in town, and he's taking Phoenix on walks, and he wants to hang out with Lucas, and let's go. And Lucas built him this whole box structure playhouse over here that you can't see, it's out of frame. And when Phoenix wakes up, he comes out and he's like, is Lucas in the box? And and I love that, so for the people that don't want to have their own children, there is a way to essentially have children and be involved in your your friends' kids' lives.
I feel very involved in his life, and I see him like
100%
once or twice a year, but it's also just so like, it feels so nice to be part of his, like, just see him grow, like with parents like you and Jess, who like have this kind of different way of parenting, I would say, you know, just like very open and inviting, but like at the same time, very loving and very like clear on like boundaries too, you know, and like, just like, you're not like, it's not just like this like wishy-washy thing. It's like, you guys are really like looking at this as like being legitimately great parents, and you guys are, you know, and but it's maybe just a bit different than how some other people would approach parenting.
Yeah. I just read a good amount of books, and I did some, but I just kind of knew that just the way that we all treat each other as friends and family, that it was just going to be another extension of that process of being very present and aware, and, you know, self-reflecting and seeing how you're showing up, and, you know, just self-development.
Yeah.
And so I still listen to a lot of podcasts and things, and I try to, you know, interwork that into, you know, how we're being present as parents. But again, to touch upon, you know, all of you guys that are involved in his life, it makes the experience so much richer for us, but also it puts my mind at ease knowing like we're not alone, like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like you guys come visit, and like 2020, I'm manifesting a house.
Yeah.
I'm saying it on air. It's going to happen.
Nice.
And then we'll have a space where people can actually come and stay. Not that this hasn't been many people's beds right here where we're sitting, but there's like, I don't know, there's this like comfort feeling and this knowing that that is what we're creating. We've talked about it in the past, but like that's really it, where, you know, you come to town and Phoenix is going to learn movement from you, and we'll, you know, have IFS sessions, and we can do, you know, he can learn about setting up podcasts as he's older, you know, and camera gear and these, you know.
Yeah, he will definitely be a guest on the Tim So Show. Probably, I was telling Jess, or I think I was telling Jess, I want to like have him as a guest. We tried the other day, but it was like a little tough. Maybe at like 3, he'll be better, and then it's like every year we do a podcast, like as Phoenix is growing.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
so
it'd be
fun.
super fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is this like really like this incredible support network that we have, and that we're so grateful for all of you guys. So when you're saying like, how do you do all this? It's like, well, it's because you guys all helped me.
Yeah, right.
Seriously,
right.
you know, and Jess is incredible, and she's the best mom I could imagine, best partner I could imagine having through all this. So yeah, it never feels like, wow, look how much I'm doing. Never. It doesn't feel like that. It's just like, you know, you're just doing what you do, and then something else comes into the fold, and you're like, all right.
Yeah. So do you feel like, I guess where I want to go with this is another Ryan Holiday book I've been reading. It just started. It's called Stillness Is the Key, and it's his latest book, and it's actually the end of a trilogy. Of the first one was The Obstacle Is the Way, which actually I think we spoke about quite a bit earlier, as you were just talking about how like everything is just kind of coming, and you're just like, there's actually a way this way, and but you make that obstacle, quote unquote, part of the journey, you know. And so that's the first book, and then there's Ego is the Enemy, which is pretty good too, and then this one, Stillness Is the Key, is actually, it's a concept that I personally am just loving the most myself, with like my meditation retreats and practice and just being in stillness and silence. I'm learning the most about myself and life and everything through that personally. But you know, when I saw you kind of surfing yesterday, and you're just out there in like the coldest water, and I just jumped in. I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I was in there for like a minute or two, and I'm just like, it was so refreshing and nice, but I just couldn't stay in that long, you know. And you're just sitting there. You're like, no, I'm used to it, you know. And you're like waiting to catch a wave, and I was like observing you, and I was just even telling Jess, I'm like, oh, like look what he's doing right now. Like he is. It's like you're in pure meditation. You're just like allowing. To me, what I'm perceiving is like everything is just kind of still for you there, and the phones aren't there. Phoenix's noises and everything aren't there, and so it gives you, to me, that like this. I don't tell me if I'm wrong, but it gives you that like moment, whether it's like 10 minutes or like an hour, to just like stop everything and like allow your thoughts to start flowing in and out of whatever that needs to be like it's like clearing the cache. It's a great analogy I've kind of
Clearing
picked
the
up.
cache.
My buddy Shane told me about this analogy when he
that.
goes into like those pictures I was showing you.
Yeah.
When he's like, whenever I go into the woods and like go chaga hunting, and like he's like, I'm just clearing the cache. You know, it's like everything that's been built up is just starting to like come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for him, it's
channeling
in the
it
woods.
out.
Yeah. For you, I think it's surfing. You know?
That's why I, first of all, if anybody needs a good book recommendation, like almost all of my favorite books that I've read in the last 2 years were something that you recommended or that you had read.
Then I highly recommend picking this one up. Well, I would recommend it anyway. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to.
Yeah.
But you led me to reading Flow.
Okay. Nice.
By Mihaly, and I don't know how to pronounce it.
Csikszentmihalyi. Yeah.
That's how you say it?
Yeah.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah.
Been wanting to know how to say that for a while. I actually tried to Google it and didn't get anything good. And yeah, surfing is definitely a flow state for me. So that's really cool. And means a lot to me that to see you witness that yesterday. I guess that is where I go. I didn't think it could be 10 minutes. It could be a half hour. I never know. I completely lose track of time.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law offered me a Apple Watch that he wasn't using the other day. Thank you, by the way. And I said, hell no. I don't want that on my wrist when I'm out there. I do like to have the time because all of a sudden I'll come back to and be like, I have no idea how much time has passed.
It's so funny because I was telling Jess about this and she was like, yeah, I know. Like sometimes I'm like sitting here being like, hey, and you're like, hey, and she like has to pee or like she's so hungry. She was telling me how pissed she gets about that.
Yeah.
And like you've kind of learned now or something.
Yeah.
It just like cracked me up so much. I'm like, wow, that's so like Jess, you know?
Oh, yeah. She just grounded me back.
Yeah. But yeah,
it
good,
is.
yeah, good for you to not even take that Apple Watch out there. Like that's the whole point, is to not have it, you know.
It's just that little release, and it is exactly what you described. It's that moment when, you know, it's why I try to do it every morning. Right now with my schedule, it's pretty tough. I'm getting home and going to bed like at the time when I was thinking about waking up to sneak out of the house without waking anybody up. But it's just a place to like turn everything off. And that was really what guided me into this career in the first place, is I realized I could surf every day, and I could save up money, and I wasn't kind of part of this 9-to-5 rat race, you know, struggle, especially when I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I wasn't just going to jump into that and be a part of it unless I really felt passionate about something. And I think it's important for everybody to find that thing that gives them flow, you know, and I do actually get flow when I'm bartending too, because you're just like, you have to be present and you're making this cocktail and that cocktail and you're remembering this recipe of a cocktail that you haven't made in 10 years while making sure that you're like, oh, that person wanted their steak frites medium rare. And, you know, it's like all these things and you don't have room for the other thoughts, you know? And I know you have movement. And you go into a flow state when you make coffee too.
Totally. Yeah. I've been noticing that too.
And which is a similar thing to like making the drinks, right?
Right.
And so surfing is just my place where it's one of my favorite things to do in a human body.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's like, some people might think surfing's terrible or scary or boring, and you've got painting or drawing or listening to music or playing the violin, or like, everybody has it. You just have to find it if you don't have it yet.
Yeah.
You know, there are a few people that I know that don't have that in their life, and it's like, you can't find it for them. But it hurts my heart a little bit to know that like they don't have that escape.
Totally, man. Yeah. It is something to discover on your own. Like there isn't really there isn't like a process to it. 'Cause like, and actually, like one of the things that I think guides you towards this is like finding a teacher who's really good at teaching it, or like a mentor. Like for me, it was like movement was because I stumbled across Ito. Like that's really like, otherwise I wouldn't be this obsessed with movement in my body, you know? Oh, maybe in some other way, but like certainly he propelled it. Like there was just that moment where it was like, oh fuck, like this is crazy. This is changing my life immediately, you know? And Ito actually said this thing as well, was like, he was talking about how like the teacher is so important, and how he's like, look, he's had some great movement teachers too, and maybe just in different forms. They weren't called movement teachers or anything, but you know, a lot of the people he's learned from along the way, like made him more curious and dove into this whole thing. And he's just this like, you know, maverick in like the movement world, where he's just like created this whole new way of thinking and looking at your body. And, and really like, he's like, to me, changing culture in general from like a culture that sits and is stagnant and whatever, to like really like a vision of becoming a whole movement culture, you know, like incorporating movement into our lives, wherever that is, you know? And so what he had said once was like, look, like I'm teaching movement, but like I could have found a violin teacher and I could have just been teaching violin. So I think it's a lot about, you know, finding those like guides or mentors, or just really, to me, it's not really finding, it's like stumbling across them, because your curiosity takes you towards these things, right? Yeah.
Destiny leads you there.
Yeah. It's like, these are the things where I feel as though it's like, if you're searching, like you're going to find dead ends, you know? But if you're like opening yourself up to it, and you're actually like naturally just curiosity is flowing through you, then like that you have a really good chance of like stumbling across something that's going to just like click in your mind and be like, whoa, you know, I got to keep going here, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That just the way you're describing that reminds me of one of my favorite lines in one of my favorite poems. The gods will offer you chances. Know them, take them.
Yeah. Nice.
It's like you have these little opportunities, you know, go through the door.
Where's that from?
It's from Charles Bukowski poem.
Oh, nice. Yeah. 1 second, I'm gonna restart this, but keep talking about poetry.
Yeah, poetry is definitely another flow state. I really like reading it. I would wish I was better at writing it, but I definitely let it try to do some just like stream of thought stuff, like down in the journal. Sometimes it's just nice to put journaling and putting words on paper. Well, my astrological chart and my sign.
What is your sign?
I'm an Aries, and then I had my chart read from, I believe, from like a Chinese calendar perspective. And one of the things that it hit me with was, in this lifetime, you're a collector of things. And it's so true. When I was 5 or 6, I started a Swiss Army knife collection. My parents, people thought my parents were crazy, and even I'm kind of surprised that they let me do it, but I had one. And you know, now I love surfboards because it's part of my passion. And so like there are these tools that it's like having, you know, I would imagine if I were a painter, I would love all the paintbrushes, or, you know, if you're a photographer, like you like having camera lenses. And I enjoy photography, not as good as you are, but I enjoy looking at the gear and things made with intention for a purpose, you know? Right. And yeah. So yeah, with poetry and quotes, I realized that, I'm also a collector of poetry and quotes, because I have these journals that are full of these little things that inspire me. And so yeah, I don't know, that just popped in my head when you were talking about it.
That's sweet.
These
what
opportunities.
Was the Bukowski quote?
Charles Bukowski. It's I think the poem is called "Your Life Is Your Life." It's "Your life is your life." I don't know if I have it completely memorized. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. There is a way out. There is a light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. And then I think it ends with "Your life is your life" again, or I mix some of that
sick.
up again.
Oh, wow, I love Bukowski, man.
Yeah,
I haven't like read much of his poetry, but I wrote one of his books. Read one of his books, Post Office, I think. Sweet. It's like he's just great.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty crass and crude, and it was like similar to Henry Miller in some ways, where there's like things you're reading and you're like, whoa, this is really intense. But also there's just these moments of like pure brilliance and light shining through all of the darkness. Yeah, now I want to grab my phone and read that, because I know I missed it a bit there. Yeah. Sorry, listeners. Yeah. Yeah, there's a phrase about. Yeah, we can just keep going.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Nice, man.
You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it.
Nice.
The gods wait to delight in you. That's the end of it. The gods wait to delight in you. which is cool. So it's like you have these little opportunities like you're talking about to like, hey, this could be a passion of yours. You know, find something to be passionate about. You know, and I feel lucky that I have a lot of things that I feel really passionate about, you know, just like showing up in my friends' lives and having, you know, real conversations and sharing, you know, like our like deep thoughts. Like I'm really passionate about that. We've had talks until probably the sun comes up multiple times. And surfing, I'm passionate about that. You know, I'm passionate about building these businesses. It's fun to do that. And, you know, it gives you finding that things that we want to feel like we have a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I had a lot of depression growing up, cycles of just like such like deep, hard, like self-analyzation and feeling like an alien. And now after reading Flow, I've really realized like, oh yeah, okay. When I was in first grade, I remember there was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we had to go around the classroom saying it. And I said, I want to be happy. And I remember people laughing at me, but in that moment I wasn't embarrassed. I remember very clearly I wasn't embarrassed. And I was like, well, yeah, I want to be happy. Like that's what I want to be. And, in reading Flow, I realized like, okay, yeah, I do. I want to dedicate my life to the pursuit of happiness. And that's what I'm trying to do with everything.
Yeah. I mean, I find that like the people I'm friends with all have like a collection of these things that they're like just like nerdy or curious about. And it's like, these are the conversations I just have with people because I think, you know, when I was younger, it was like I didn't have that, and I was very envious of like people who were like just so into something. I was like, damn, like I kind of want something like that. Why don't I have that? You know, it's like the only thing I was actually like really interested in was soccer because I was just like pretty good at it, you know, and hockey a little bit. But you know, I was really told to like I needed to get good grades and study and whatever, you know, and all that. So it was like, it didn't feel like I had a lot of space for just like this natural curiosity to unfold into certain things, you know, and to allow myself to kind of guide myself into it. Actually, like I picked up, I just like bought a guitar in like grade 10 and like started playing it. And really it was because my best friend at the time, my buddy Matt, he bought a guitar too. And he's like, why don't you get one and like we can like play together? I was like, yeah, it's actually a great idea, you know? And because I was just asking him and I was like, how do you learn? He's like, I just taught myself. I was like, what? Like, you can do that? He's like, yeah, man, just go online or whatever, you know? And he's still an incredible musician and singer and songwriter. And, but he really like motivated me and got me curious and interested to start playing and learning the guitar. And it was just so fun. It was like the only thing that I felt like maybe I had that was just kind of...
It was yours.
Yeah, it was mine. Like my parents didn't tell me to do it. They, even when they like they weren't like, well, why don't you get lessons or whatever? You know, it wasn't even anything like that. It was just like purely mine that I was just being curious and getting fun about, you know? So, and obviously like since then, now there's just like all these things, but it's like, that's what I'm collecting now. It's like, that's what I look to collect, right? It's not... If it doesn't feel like this kind of like curiosity that's flowing within me with something, it's like, then I start to ask at some point, like, should I be doing this? You know, or like, is this part of my life? Like, should this be part of my life? You know, luckily I don't have any of that anymore because it's just, I've just collected all these things and filled it up with so much curiosity and excitement that it's like,
oh yeah,
my mode.
You have become so Tim.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody feels from being around you. Just like all the things that you're doing and focusing on and putting your energy into, and the way you look and the way you talk and everything. It's like, I remember the first time I saw you in the back of shift camp at Burning Man. Standing over that tiny little bike that you were riding around that year, and you had long hair, and I remember talking to you and hanging out that whole time, and like, wow, like the transition and the journey that you've gone on from then to now. I think we're all just so proud of you, of what you're doing. Seriously, man, it's really cool. And you know, we all love you so much, but it's cool to see how you've just like stepped into your power, into who you are and where you're going.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. Feels great. Feels real. Yeah. Feels like it's there's definitely just an endless life to discover. And that just feels liberating, and like liberating, and also just, you know, there's times when I like stop. I might just be driving or something, and I'm just like, Jesus, like I am so goddamn privileged, and just like, how do I get to live this life, you know, where probably like, I don't know, 90% of people don't, maybe more, you know, and it's just like, man, why, like, how was I dealt this hand? You know, that's like, yeah. So I just kind of sit in awe sometimes and think that like, you know, it's obviously like life is hard for everyone at times, you know, but it's a nice reminder when you're going through those things. It's like, oh man, look at like when life is hard, look what I get to do. Like I actually get to stop and I actually get to like sit with this difficulty. Like I don't have to worry about putting, you know, food on the table. I don't have to worry about like where I'm going to sleep. It's like I actually have time to sit and like be with any of these difficulties that come up, and that's just like, that's a gift, you know, that just most people don't get. You know, and I think that's when you have that realization or perspective, it like for me it elicits a more of a desire to give back and to be of service, is kind of like you're discovering as well, you know. And I think the more we go inside and the more we learn about ourselves, the deeper we can be of service to this world, you know. Sweet, bro. Well, this was great, man. This was a nice round one. You know,
Perfect.
We'll do this more, but yeah, it was a nice amount of time.
Thank you for having me on. Honestly, it's an honor.
Of course.
One thing, I don't know if we finished the Hernan's journey, but the fact that he is now a legal U.S. resident.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks to the tequila and to Cinco and the Aceves brothers, they set Zoila, his mother, up with a meeting with the consulate in Guadalajara. Because as soon as we were able to fly down to actually see Hernan's family, I told him I would never go to Oaxaca until I can go with you.
Right. Yeah. And can you just also describe, like, he didn't go back there?
Yeah. So he didn't go back for 14 years.
Yeah. And so he hadn't seen his mom for 14 years or something?
Yeah. He hadn't seen his mom, like, his family, that he, you know, it was like I don't know, the kind of like the sick irony of it all was that he had left them because he loved them so much to provide for them, but he couldn't see them. It's just like, luckily we have FaceTime and all of this modern technology. They're able to interact quite often in a close way. And they're like best friends. It's so cute to see them together. But so we finally got him legal U.S. residency, and we were able to, you know, he has this travel visa, and we're able to go and we land in Oaxaca. And sorry, this is gonna be another couple of minutes because this is a cool story.
No time.
And for some reason, in the Oaxaca City Airport, you put your luggage through a check as if you would put it through when you're about to take off here in the United States or Canada. And so it's like there's this long line to like check out to go see everybody.
I know what you're talking about.
And the doors are opening as people are leaving, and we're in the middle of this line. So for like, it's been 14 years, and then his family, the doors open and we see them. They're all there waving, and then the door's shut. And it's like, how funny is this that you've waited 14 years? Now we have to wait another 40 minutes, like, well, to go out. So we're like sitting there and like getting to see all them. And, you know, Marco had come and lived in the U.S. for a while, so I knew him, but I hadn't seen him for forever. And we get out there, and she goes right past Zoila. His mom goes right past Hernan, and she goes, Blake, she grabs my hands, little tiny Zoila, but so powerful. And she goes, bienvenidos. Esto es tu tierra. Esa es tu familia. Tú eres mi hijo. Welcome. This is your land. This is your family. You're my son. Wow. And it was just like, waterworks, amazing. So from there, we hung out, went all over Oaxaca. It was incredible. You know, I'm in the house that Hernan built while we worked together, and she's making ribs for me, which is what we sell at Cinco. We have these platos de Zoila's recipes, and one of them is ribs. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm eating Zoila's ribs from Zoila. Like, it was surreal, you know? Yeah. And then from there, we went to Jalisco so that Hernan could finally meet the Aceves brothers, because he hadn't been able to go there too. And we brought the whole family, and Zoila's there. And I tell Jose we're trying to, you know, get her a travel visa, and we've been shut down 4 times over the years, where she would travel all the way from Oaxaca to Mexico City and spend all this money, and then just no, you You're not
Wow.
traveling.
Damn.
And so they said, well, we have a friend, we have a connection. They have the meeting. He says, okay, well, why do you want to go to the United States? Well, my son owns a restaurant. What's it called? Cinco. Googles it. An article comes up with Hernan and myself in it. And it's okay. Well, why are you here in Jalisco? Well, my son's part of a tequila. What's it called? In Jalisco. Googles it. It's like, okay, yeah, here's your son again in another article. Stamped, approved.
Wow.
10-year open-ended travel visa. So then they came from Guadalajara out to the Highlands where we were all at this massive restaurant. And I had called her on and said, hey, what's your mom's favorite mariachi song? Because there's a mariachi band. And when she walks in, we had her favorite song playing. And it was just this like magical moment of like really what we're creating. Like, yeah, it's a business. But really we've created this family and this lifestyle that's transcended language barriers and national borders and, governments trying to keep people apart. And we've been able to reunite his family and to create this giant family. And that's like something really special. And I just didn't want to forget to share that last bit because it's actually the coolest part of everything we've created.
Mm-hmm. Totally, man. Yeah. It's to me as well. Yeah. It's like, it's a microcosm of like, I think what you're doing on a larger scale, it's like what the bigger vision is. It's like that whole story can like really encompass, so much, like everything about what you guys do,
Yeah. It makes me think one of my favorite quotes that I have written in a journal is from Paulo Coelho. I think that's how you pronounce his name. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. And I think in that sense, we really do lead by example of, with this giant extended family that's from such different beginnings and that we all come together and we unite to create something special and to create a lifestyle together.
Nice. Amazing, bro. I'm so happy you felt that. Yeah. That's a really important piece. Cool, bro. Okay. So anything else you want to share?
I'm sure, but we'll just do it next time.
Nice. All right. Well, I do just want to let people know that if they are in LA, they should definitely go to Cinco or the Manchester, which are both in what's the area?
Westchester, Playa del Rey. If you go on social media, Jess, my wife, and I respond to all those messages. So just hit us up. I'd love to say hello and pour you a drink
as well.
Yeah, and if you're into tequila and Jalisco. Yeah.
How many states is it in now?
33. And we tried to get into Canada, but man, the LCBO is just driving such a hard price on us. We were going to lose money to bring it into the country. So
that's why
for now, it's not going to happen. But when the agave price comes back down, like I was saying, the cycles of agave supply, it might dip low enough to where if they still want to drive that price on us, that we could bring it in. But until then, it's 2 bottles in your bag at a time, I guess.
Yeah, nice. All right, man. Thanks a lot, brother.
Yeah, love you, dude.
Love you too, man.